All right, everybody, welcome back to Beans No Ball. Welcome to the Week 6 recap. A lot of football to get into. I personally was not able to catch the whole Sunday slate. Had somewhere to be, so my takes will be a little subpar. Already gonna get you guys ready for that, but of course, I'll let you get it started right here, Christian.
Yeah, so let's start off with the Thursday nighter. Nice, AFC West matchup, which did not expect the way to go that I expected. The Chiefs and the Broncos. Now, this was a highly defensive battle to start the game off. I mean, the Broncos defense was looking great, especially with all the flaws they were going through the past couple of games. It looked great. They were stopping Kansas City. Kansas City wasn't really going anywhere. Pretty much just field goals the whole first half. The offense of the Broncos, they couldn't get anything going. Unfortunately, Wilson, the whole first half, could not break 100 yards passing. I believe he had about 60 at the half, which looks pretty bad. Offense looking horrible. Play calling was pretty bad. Could say the same thing for both sides, even though Casey stepped it up a bit in the second half. But the Broncos defense was getting too tired. They couldn't do anything towards the end of the game, as the offense could not be as productive. And obviously, with the talk with Jerry Jeudy, which will happen with Stephen A. Smith, with the little, talking smack about him. And obviously, receivers couldn't get much done. Russell couldn't get it going. Run game for the Broncos started off, pretty okay to begin with, but really couldn't get much job done. Kansas City, they got that one touchdown to kind of pretty much seal the game for them. Broncos had the opportunity at the end, but they just couldn't get it done with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, so we'll move it right into the Sunday slate, and of course the last London game of the season with the Ravens and the Titans. And I know, Christian, we had a disagreement in this one. I expected the Titans to come away. I expected a relatively good game for Derrick Henry, as what we usually say, a good run game for the Titans usually is all they need. This time, the run game wasn't enough. Derrick Henry did have some pretty good success, just under 100 yards, and got into the end zone. So usually expect the Titans to pull out a win with that. But of course, it was a really rough, really slow first half. The Titans were down big. It was Ryan Tannehill was having a really subpar game. Obviously, he did come out with an injury. Was diagnosed with a high ankle sprain, which they are going to have a bye week, so it gives them time to regroup and see, gives him time to worry about his injury, if he's going to have enough time to recover. But of course, Malik Willis did come in to finish out the game. He looked, you could see the flashes for potential, don't get me wrong, but he looks incredibly raw. All he really was working, on the run game. He was he looked like a pretty good running quarterback, but that was just about it. Looked, to put it lightly, XFL quality at best. Honestly, personally, if Tannehill is going to have to see timeout, I would really like to see Will Levis. I know we would both kind of were trending in that direction. We both expected Will Levis to be the quarterback sooner or later, so I think that would be the biggest thing that the Titans would need to do. And as for the Ravens, John Harbaugh put it the best to begin with. They were just shooting themselves in the foot way too much. That lead that they had in halftime, it just slowly dwindled little by little, and they almost lost the game. It came down to an onside kick that they did end up recovering. But this Ravens Ravens team is really bipolar. It's tough to see whether they're gonna wake it up and be contenders, or if they're gonna end up just missing the playoffs entirely. So it's a lot to wait and see which side they're gonna end up picking.
Yeah, now moving on to Washington and Atlanta. This was another back-to-back game that we did have a disagreement on, and Washington got the upper hand here in this game. To start with, honestly, this whole game it was pretty close matchup between both teams. Most defense was pretty much putting in the work for both teams up until the second half. Desmond Ridder, once again he couldn't capitalize off a win of the following week to have a back-to-back good games. Desmond Ridder just did not look good. Three picks the whole game. It really shot himself in the foot as well. Sam Howell, he did all he could. 3 touchdown passes kind of get him the lead up with Washington. But really both defenses, they really just get worn out by by the offenses, and the play calling as well. It was looking a little sloppy, and another story again. Kyle Pitts finally got a touchdown. on American soil for the Falcons. Luckily, they really couldn't do much right then and there. But the defense of the Commanders, they start to look a little good the more during the second half, which pretty much sealed everything for them. After that, the 2-possession lead, the defense was pretty much on their heels for that, putting less pressure on Sam Howell. Atlanta, this looks like they still have a problem at the quarterback situation. It looks like Desmond Ridder could not be it. I wouldn't say it's still too early to tell. I'm pretty sure we're already a little far into the season to see what the type of player Desmond Ridder is.
Yeah, a lot to say there, but moving into another, so let's call another ugly game here with the Vikings and the Bears, which honestly we both could have seen this coming. To pretty underwhelming defenses, at least for sure, and obviously with the Bears, could see that coming a mile away. So for Minnesota, it was an ugly, lucky win, pretty sad win to put it lightly. I mean, we usually expect at least the offense to be the bright spot, but with Justin Jefferson out, that obviously killed half of their offense right then and there. I know you expected Jordan Addison to really pick it up, really hit a lot, but I mean, wasn't really that much prevalent in the stat sheet. Obviously, T.J. Hawkinson did overshine him just a bit on the receiving end. But for the Vikings, the key thing here was their defense, which I know we've been shitting on them ever since last season. But for once, I mean, they were the bright spot. I did pick them up for my fantasy team, and they got 22 points. So a really, really good bright spot. I mean, I doubt this will be something continue. Obviously, they were playing the Bears, but kind of polar opposites to what we would have expected to happen on both sides of the ball for the Vikings. And I mean, as for the Bears, kind of more of what we expected. Just even more alarm bells ringing now. Obviously, Justin Fields did leave the game with a dislocated thumb, and it's looking like he's gonna have to miss time. It's honestly a bit surprising that a dislocation is going to be keeping him out, but it's just we'll see what they can do if they do plan on picking up a quarterback off the market, or if Bagan is actually going to be someone they want to keep rolling with. We'll see what happens moving forward throughout the week.
Yeah, now moving on to another game that was pretty tight to begin with, the Seattle Seahawks and the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals, they really laid the hammer to the Seattle Seahawks with all the opportunities the Seahawks had, to score again in the end zone, the red zone. But Geno Smith pretty much he sold a bag with those interceptions that really costed him a chance to secure this win. The Seahawks, they're a team that was supposed to be one of the contending teams, I guess you could say, somewhat good, pretty decent race in the NFC West. I think it's starting to get a little bit competitive, as your Rams are exceeding expectations. But the Cincinnati Bengals are obviously capitalizing off the mistakes of the Seahawks. And looking at this, I can't recall if we mentioned it before, that if it's going to be another season where the Cincinnati Bengals start off slow and they start to pick it up, which, could potentially see this way it's happening. The Bengals are they're 3-3 right now. So they are picking up a bit. Joe Burrow's finally, getting those past games out of the way, finally getting himself back in his rhythm that he used to be. And Ja'Marr Chase as well, 7-Eleven always open. Ja'Marr Chase finally stepping up for this offense of the Bengals, especially with a lackluster run game with Joe Mixon, who's honestly on my fantasy not really cutting it. And then look, excuse me, with the AFC North as well, with how it's looking right now, with with the Ravens looking a little slow, the Bengals could possibly come up and overtake that position at the number 1 spot.
Yeah, so keep it in both of these divisions. Another NFC West, AFC North matchup. The upset of the week, I think both of us can really say here, the Niners finally taken down by the Browns of all teams. XFL legend PJ Walker led the charge. I mean, let's say how it is. He kind of seemed to be doing everything in his power to throw the game away, but in the end, the Browns were able to hang on. I mean, for Walker, I mean, he led that drive right at the end. It looked a little shaky. I mean, he kind of had some poor decision making with the clock management. Could have just ran the ball out a couple times, and when he ended up getting all these incompletions, he saved a lot of time for the Niners. But even though the Niners were able to drive all the way into field goal range, that big miss by Jake Moody was obviously the difference maker, and was able to close out probably one of the more surprising upsets we've seen up to date right now this season. For the Niners, I mean, it's tough to say. I'm not gonna go ahead and say it yet. I don't want to throw it up, but is the Linsanity run for Brock Purdy over? It is starting to look that way. We can obviously attribute all of his production, all of his poor production this week to a lot of the injuries, but that's kind of what shows, maybe he is a system quarterback. No McCaffrey, he did have to leave the game. He did come back, but it's looking like McCaffrey's not going to have to miss time, so that's great news for the Niners. He loses probably the best lineman in the league in Trent Williams. That's also to be seen if he's gonna miss time. And of course, Deebo Samuel, who he also did leave the game. So that's 3 big injuries that obviously did affect what Purdy was able to do. But also, that's just going to be key for the Niners to see what they're going to have moving forward. Obviously, they have a long road ahead to keep up in the NFC West. But, I mean, look, I wouldn't say it's an alarming loss for the Niners. All things considered, Cleveland does have a pretty solid team, but it is something that it is eye-opening to see what they have moving forward with Brock Purdy.
Yeah, now moving right along with the next game that, seems a little bit slow for the team that was supposed to obviously take it away, which they did, the Carolina Panthers and the Miami Dolphins. Carolina had full control in just the first quarter, which is pretty alarming to see. No one really expected that, and then after that, they just really couldn't get anything going. Tua finally started clicking in the second quarter, and they started getting on their heels. I mean, Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert, obviously, 2 big monsters on that team that are the big leaders of the excuse me, the Dolphins, not including Tua. Just another big game for both those guys. And looking at Miami, they're looking like to be the team in the AFC to beat. They look extremely well. Defense, offense, both sides of the ball look extremely well against the Panthers, which I would expect to be good against the Panthers since they are now 0-6. Bryce Young has still yet to see a win in this league, and a lot of complications with the Carolina Panthers. Obviously Frank Reich, the head coach, obviously he's not cutting it. The play calling, the offense, the defense is just everywhere. Bryce Young, and obviously with DJ Moore leaving in the offseason, trading him away, he doesn't really have a number one receiver to really throw to. That's really another big problem for the Panthers. And then their run game just really couldn't get anything going. It did seem like they could have upset the Miami Dolphins, but obviously there's some turmoil that just had to happen in the second quarter, and from there they just really couldn't pick anything done. So it's a lot going on with the Carolina Panthers. It just doesn't seem everything going their way, and Bryce Young hopefully gets his win sooner or later. But same old Carolina Panthers quarterback situation. I wouldn't get too worried about that. Bryce Young just needs a team around him to compete.
So moving into a pretty big matchup in the AFC South, this one was going to give supremacy in first place to whoever won. Bit more of what was expected. The Jaguars were able to come away with this. It was a close game throughout. Of course, they did end up at a certain point where they were up 25. That kind of just showed the supremacy they were having. Of course, when you lose your QB1 in Anthony Richardson, which now the reports were kind of made, he is probably going to take that season-ending surgery. So unfortunately for Richardson, that's going to cut his rookie year short. Sure looks like Stroud was gonna run away with rookie of the year, but that takes his chance of trying to challenge for it. But of course, Gardner Minshew was the star in this game, and it with a pretty low-key underrated defense in the Jaguars. They were bringing the game to him, and it was gonna have to be they were gonna make Gardner Minshew win the game himself, and the bet paid off. He had a relatively solid game. I mean, sure, the 2 picks did hurt him at the end of the day, but that was a testament of what a solid defense the Jaguars have been building in the past couple years. But overall, it was just I guess a lot of what you would expect. The key takeaway right now is, of course, is Trevor Lawrence going to be okay? Is he going to be ready to come back for Thursday night? Reports do seem to indicate that. So it's a big key for them, because if it's not Trevor Lawrence, you're stuck with CJ Beathard, and we've seen his track record in the league. It's not the greatest. So obviously hope for the best for that injury, but I mean, it was just a big testament of what the supremacy is looking to teeter its way right back to the Jaguars in the AFC South.
Yeah, and so obviously staying within the division of the AFC South division, the Houston Texans were hosting the New Orleans Saints, and this was another, pretty lackluster game. Derek Carr, he had himself a game for the Saints that pretty much, he had himself a game, but obviously him leaving with an injury, which, he starts to look good, so he's on pace to start for next week. But obviously, famous Jameis was just got in the game, but obviously he couldn't get it done. CJ Stroud, obviously, he's looking phenomenal. And once again, I'm going back to, my take on him, where I thought he wasn't going to do well. Obviously, I hate that up, accepted it. And, David, you were right. You called it. CJ Stroud is having himself a year. He's right now arguably going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Rookie of the Year, if you really, really think about it. He's on track to win that. And obviously, his streak has finally came to an end with most completions without interception. Finally having that record. So good for CJ Stroud. But the Texans, they're looking, they're starting to look up from the beginning. I mean, Nico Collins, which, is CJ Stroud's, his number one threat in the receiving corps, which is looking great. Defensively, this game, once again, another defensive battle. There's a lot of defensive battles this whole week. This was one of them. The Saints, they had a lot of opportunities, still with Carr in there, but the Houston Texans defense was really getting to them, which pretty much sealed the deal this whole game. The Texans, looking good for them. They could battle for that spot in the AFC South. And it's looking potentially that, the division could be theirs, but their only competitor is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And as we're speaking for them, with the thing with Trevor Lawrence and this and that, it could be potential. They have a lot of potential for that. And CJ Stroud, he could lead this team. And it's looking really, really good for them.
Yeah, so move this right into my game this time. I know I always say I'll keep it light this time. I will keep it light. Obviously didn't get to watch this game, so I was really went in, diligently studied the highlights, and got myself a couple takeaways overall. So regardless, I mean, it was an ugly start. Josh Dobbs was running like crazy. He was they were just doing great offensively, really moving the ball. I mean, obviously what I always preach, our defense, bend don't break. They were holding to field goals. I am, always happy to see that. They only got 3 field goals overall, so that to start. I mean, they did have that 9-6 lead at half. Was a little scary every time I would check the score when I was out. Still seeing we were down to the Cardinals. I was a little worried, but at the end of the day, really picked it up, 20 straight points in the second half. So, all was well, I guess. Big surprise for me. Obviously, I know I always talk about, hey, we always seem to be just come out firing in the first half and have a really shitty second half. Exact opposite happened here. So glad to see we can actually finish a game this time. So I think we can all say Cooper Kupp is officially back. He just had of course one of his regular generational games. Almost cracked 150 yards and got back into the end zone. So just a great game for him. Puka was a little disappointing, but of course, as most of us were expecting, we are expecting that drop off. I do expect him to coexist pretty well. This was a game that he was going to see a little dip in that production. Really was expecting that. But the key story of the game here, Kyren Williams, who is someone I have been preaching ever since last season. In the absence of Cam Akers, who he's been on the downturn ever since that playoff game against the Seahawks. Kyren Williams has always been a bright spot and a beacon of hope for the run game that I've always really been happy with, and it's fine. It's really great to see him, really reaping those rewards little by little. Of course, a career game for him, over 150 yards, back in the end zone. Just really, really great to see here. Of course, that injury is that ankle sprain. It's going to be, it's likely to keep him out of the Steelers game next week. So, sure, that is going to be that's something to see. I mean, the Rams did already start picking up a couple guys. We went out and got 3 guys today specifically with Royce Freeman, Myles Gaskin, and we picked up Darrell Henderson back, a big piece that was with the team when we made the Super Bowl run. So lots to see what we will be able to do there. Hopefully the offensive line can hold up for these guys, which obviously Stafford was sacked a couple times, but O-line did hold enough to really give a really good game for our running back, and overall just really it's a really satisfying win for the Rams.
Yeah, now moving on to another ugly matchup, the Patriots and the Raiders. With this New England team, it's not looking great as well, which would be expected for the last couple of games. I mean, this is Bill Belichick's worst starts, I believe, since the late 90s. 1-5. Mac Jones starting to look like he's not the answer for the Patriots. And I've said before, Mac, doesn't really have the weapons that he needs. Juju, Kendrick Bourne, not really, living up to what they, expected to be. And I think the Patriots did shoot himself in the foot with this one, with letting Jacoby Myers go to the Raiders. Same deal that they offered Juju, they offered Jacoby, and they could have kept with that. And I do believe Jacoby's a little bit better than Juju. And looking at this, it's a lot of turmoil going on with this New England team. Their defense was putting up a lot of work against these Raiders, and the defense is supposed to be the part that's that's supposed to be looking a little good for the Patriots, but that's what really kept them in the game. And Mac Jones just didn't have himself a game. There's a lot of frustration everywhere with this team, and let alone to the Raiders. They have their complication as well, with Jimmy G now being potentially out following week, and could miss some time with the back injury that he suffered that game. So a lot of both terminals for this team's going on, especially with the divisions that they're in. It doesn't really seem like a lot of hope for them. But overall, this game, it was a pretty close game. There's really not much to say about this one other than the quarterback situations with both these teams. It's looking pretty slow, pretty down in the dumps for them.
So moving into another great upset that I guess no one was really expecting. This was expected to be a really big matchup moving into when we obviously got the schedule seeing, but of course with the Aaron Rodgers injury, did downgrade to seeing Zach Wilson. But I mean, look at just a phenomenal game for the Jets overall. I mean, no one could have seen this coming, especially of course 3 corners out, especially obviously the key one being Sauce Gardner. That it was expected for the Eagles defense, the Jets defense to really struggle here. I know corners aside, but you did expect DeAndre Swift to have a really good game, considering the Jets defense did look depleted. But of course, the Eagles receivers were still getting locked up, and big thing here, Jalen Hurts threw 3 interceptions. So the Jets defense really just unlocking their potential once again, really showing why they are someone that isn't to be taken lightly, which we always talk about. I know you specifically, after the Cowboys did play the Jets, you yourself saying it's clear the Jets have a really good defense. And I'm not going to stretch this out. As for the Eagles, I mean, they're fine. I'm not too worried. I mean, as we're saying, they're playing a good defense. It's surprising, of course, they're still missing some of the key pieces, but I still think it's just a matter of, as long as they take this for what it's worth, Jalen can actually, grow from it and, move forward correctly. It's, any great team's gonna come away with a pretty shitty loss like this. So I'm honestly still not too worried about the Eagles moving forward in their quest for the NFC.
Yeah, now moving right along to another great game from this Detroit Lions team that's really put me in my place from the takes I had this offseason. Jared Goff, he's having himself a year. I mean, he had a phenomenal game, 340 yards and 2 touchdowns, really lighting up this Bucs defense that, was supposed to be looking pretty good, especially looking at the team with Tampa. But and then obviously with the receivers of the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff's main weapon, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he just torched the secondary of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and obviously now adding back with Jameson Williams, he had a pretty mid game, not to say the least, but still got to get accustomed to this. But the Lions and their defense, just a year ago, we talked about it before, having arguably pretty bad defense to a huge defense that stepped up this year. That's what's looking for the Detroit Lions this year. Obviously looking at the contending team for the NFC, and it's a lot to take in, especially with the way what the Lions have always been in the recent years. But Jared Goff finally making a statement. I know he had his tenure with the Rams. Those last couple of years were a little iffy, but he's finally starting to settle in, fit in with the Detroit Lions. And Dan Campbell, story of the year with Dan Campbell. I know he's your coach of the year, and he's looks like most likely going to run away with it. Dan Campbell is doing a phenomenal job coaching this Detroit Lions team. I mean, let alone him, all the other coaching staff, the way they built foundation around this whole team, it's looking very good. And obviously, as for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're still on top of the division at 3-2. Looking at the division of the NFC South, they could still potentially run away with this.
And of course, so moving into Sunday Night Football with a really surprising game in itself with the Giants and the Bills. I really hate to say it, hate to blame the refs, but I mean, you really got to say it. The refs did sell for the Giants. So primarily on that last play, right at the end. But apart from that, I mean, Tyrod Taylor really wasn't anything special. I mean, he did play pretty poorly. I mean, sure, he had 200 yards, but no, nothing in the end zone. I mean, he still kept them in the game, no less, which is, I guess, what you could ask for. I really don't know. Daniel Jones could have really done any better. So I guess take that for what it's worth. The big play, the key play that you got to look at is that right before halftime, throwing the ball on second and goal, running out of time. I mean, that really could have been the difference. Field goal, give it a little more momentum. I mean, still would have been down 2 at the end of this, but that is something key to look at the end of the day. Something that Tyrod did kind of fuck up. But as for the Bills, I mean, overall, I mean, they did look, pretty shitty overall. I mean, a lot of the guys, ended up, with favorable stats. Just, of course, Josh Allen. I mean, he just looks subpar. It's just one of those things that I guess a lot of people just kind of come to see that sometimes he kind of plays down to competition, and that is gonna turn out to be a problem moving forward in the season because, sure, this was the Giants. This was a team that you really expect to, not really do much, but, sometimes that is going to come back to bite him. So at the end of the day, he did, like he said, it is, a win's a win. As ugly as it is, it counts as good as a pretty win. But, the Bills really are going to want to pick up and, move forward, probably, looking for better wins like this.
Yeah, and I'm moving on, closing out with the Monday night, which is my game. This was, pretty close game to start off with, and a must win for the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott, I mean, phenomenal job he had this game, and I know how let my emotions get to me, how I talked about last week for the Niner game, but obviously I talked about my loyalty with Dak still going to be there, and obviously this game, once again, Dak put this team on his back. He had no run game at all whatsoever. Play calling was, I don't know what Mike McCarthy was doing, but for the most part, the play calling was atrocious. Same thing with the Chargers. Both sides of the ball, play calling was pretty bad. It was pretty mid first half. The second half, it's really everything started clicking. Dak Prescott, like I said, put it on his back, and once again, targeting CeeDee Lamb, his number 1 receiver. I think he didn't. I don't think he incompleted a pass when throwing to CD from those 7 catches and 117 yards that he got. I mean, when you're throwing to your number 1 receiver like that, you expect a lot of good things. And then Pollard, he picked it up in the receiving end rather than the rushing side. And that's what's kind of starting to bite us in the ass a bit. Where would it be nice to have Zeke there, our power back, punching it in with short yardage calls like that. And then the penalties as well with the Cowboys. I mean, same old thing with the Cowboys, the penalties. Tyler Smith, who looked phenomenal last year, 3 penalty calls on him, which, looked pretty bad. And the whole O-line, I think this is where I should start worrying about the offensive line. They gave up 5 sacks. That's not something to see with an O-line like the Dallas Cowboys. But obviously, Dak Prescott was able to bounce back with that, hitting his targets, and especially with, once again, the bad play calling. Mike McCarthy, again, with this time management, did not look good once again at all. But towards the end, the defense did step up again. Another underrated player, Marquise Bell, who's been with us for quite some time. He really stepped up on defense, getting stops and the PBUs and everything. Same thing with the corners, DaRon Bland. Keenan Allen, he was cooking most of the corners to begin with, but this was a very must-win game for the Dallas Cowboys. And looking at the Chargers with Justin Herbert, once again, this is another game, I think about the second or third game where he was down. He needed to clutch up to, potentially either tie the game or win the game, and he failed to do so. I think it's to start to jump into the conclusion where Justin Herbert, is he overrated? Is he, the quarterback for the Los Angeles Chargers? Sure, yes. You can make the argument. Brandon Staley, he's not the coach. He's not the coach for this team, and I feel that's what's holding him back. they have a lot of weapons. This Chargers team has a lot of weapons. You know, they got rookie Quentin Johnson, who did not utilize him at all. First round pick. And then Kellen Moore, who, you know, was our former offensive coordinator, really was not picking it up where he really needs to be. And Justin Herbert, once again, a game where he needed to clutch up once again. He couldn't get the job done. And that's where I'm starting to question with this Chargers team.
Yeah, so of course that is going to wrap up our week 6 highlights, week 6 recap. Of course, that was we probably extended what we wanted to say overall, but moving into our the recap of our predictions. Christian, I know I went with the Chargers just looking at the way the Cowboys were looking. That was the difference at the end of the day. You did edge me out 11-4 to 10-5, so you get a little upper hand, starting to move up, cut the lead to just 2 games now. With the head-to-head, I'm only up 6-8 now. So let's see, we got a short week this week. Got a lot of teams on bye. Of course, your Cowboys are one of the teams on bye, so you don't have a game to talk about. You'll get 2 games to highlight. So I'll let you get started with your week 7 preview.
Yeah, so starting off with the first game, the Lions and the Baltimore Ravens. It's just how we talked about. The Lions red hot, starting off well, looks really good for the Lions as well. And the Baltimore Ravens, they're starting to be a little chippy here and there with Lamar Jackson finally starting to set in a bit. You know, a couple times where, you know, he does, shoot himself in the foot, which sells the game for this. But when we're really looking at the factor of this game, it's how much the defense of the Baltimore Ravens can hold up against this highly powered Lions offense. I mean, Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, deadly duo right there. You know, quick 1-2 punch, and then obviously with David Montgomery, who I think was dealing with an injury as well.
I believe he will be playing.
Oh, I think then, yeah, he was. So again, aside from the injury news, he will be playing in the next game. David Montgomery, he's another guy on the run game that really plays big for the Detroit Lions, who's been a big factor for the Red start of the season. I think this is gonna be pretty close game. Looking at both these two teams, I don't expect a big Lions blowout on this one. I think Lamar can put the team on his back in a way. Hopefully his receivers don't drop his passes, which that's been quite an occurrence lately. And then moving on to my next highlighted game of the week, which is the Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs. So this is going to be a nice, tough AFC West matchup. And obviously looking at the loss that the Chargers just came through with my Dallas Cowboys, this is another game. It's pretty much looking like a must-win for them against this Kansas City Chiefs team. Justin Herbert with not being able to clutch up, and obviously the play calling with Brandon Staley and Kellen Moore. Chargers, they have an offense. They have the quarterback. They have the weapons. They're just not able to utilize them correctly, and that's the problem that's happening, especially with the return of Eckler. I honestly expect Eckler to have a big game against us, but the injury is still starting to settle in. And then with the defense of the Kansas City Chiefs, it is looking pretty possible. Patrick Mahomes, I don't know how much longer he's going to be able to put this team on his back. I mean, we see the flaws with this Kansas City Chiefs team. They're still on top of the AFC, but the defense is a huge liability, and that's another story that we've been talking about lately. That defense is pretty much going to pretty much settle them back on most of the time. And Travis Kelce really being the only weapon for Patrick Mahomes, I really don't see how Patrick Mahomes is going to exceed farther into the season with the weapons he has. Sure, Mahomes has done it before. He's a great quarterback. Don't get us wrong. He's great. Saying great's an understatement, but we see the type of player he is. But obviously, there's going to be another game where it's going to see if the Chargers can keep it up in this division.
Of course. So I'll start with my Rams, and of course, got a team we really can't overlook in the Steelers. I mean, sure, there's all talk, Kenny Pickett not really living up to all that standard, but what worries me to begin with is that Steelers defense. TJ Watt, which he was my defensive player of the year candidate, and he's living up to that pick. So as long as that O-line, which that's what I've been talking about, if the O-line can call it like my defense, bend don't break, I would expect TJ to get a sack. But as long as we can limit the damage, I do expect I expect that to be the main thing. I mean, sure, there's other key assets in the Steelers defense to worry about. I mean, Joey Porter Jr. has been having a really good start to his rookie year, so make sure considering our receivers, I'm not too worried. I would think, if not Cooper Kupp, even Puka Nacua would be able to lash out for their own big game. But the key thing for me is, we see how the run game really exploded this past week. I would really like to see, with the key additions we just made, I would expect Darrell Henderson to be the first option. We know how familiar he is with McVay's offense, so he'd be the easiest one to roll in. I would probably expect Gaskin to be that second option. If he could, either Gaskin or Freeman, we'll just have to wait and see. But apart from that defense, I do feel good about it, because if the Rams defense, I generally at the moment don't have much worry that they'll be able to contain Kenny Pickett. We're both expecting him to play. I do know he has that lingering injury from 2 weeks ago, but he is expected to play. And just my thing, of course, I'm gonna pick the Rams. Don't get me wrong. Just my only point of concern would be, will that Steelers defense really step up? Just really hope they don't. But moving into my highlight game, Sunday night game, one of the top games moving into the season, the Miami Dolphins and the Philadelphia Eagles. Tua against Jalen Hurts. Obviously, two teams coming off vastly different results from the past week. Great game for Tua and the Dolphins. Of course, it was against an inferior opponent, but nonetheless that. And of course, a really disappointing loss for the Eagles here. I'm expecting it to be 2 in a row for the Eagles. I really can't see Tua losing this game. I am kind of starting to buy into your Eagles defense is slowly falling off, so I really don't think they're going to be able to contain Tua. That explosive offense overall, what was there to say? You got Tyreek, Waddle, and of course, even the run game has just exploded. They lost A-Chain, Mostert, next man up, just phenomenal. Obviously, I picked him up on fantasy. And I see firsthand, the wonders he's been able to do. Just that to begin with, I really do expect just a phenomenal game. Hopefully, Tua can keep that pace. He was kind of on and off in the past couple weeks, but as long as he doesn't have another off game, I wouldn't say the Dolphins would roll, but I really do think it'd be a pretty solid win here. Sure, I do expect the Eagles to have a solid bounce back game, but I don't think it'll be enough against one of the top teams in the AFC. But of course, that is going to wrap us up here for our little Week 7 preview. That's gonna wrap up the video in general. Got a shorter week, as I already said. Lots of teams on bye. You get a little break from the heartache and stress the Cowboys always give you. I'll have to wait till a couple weeks from now for the Rams bye. But of course, barring any news, we will get to see you guys Sunday morning for all the news and in our little segments. So thank you guys for watching. I always appreciate the support, and we'll see you guys for the next video.